Here it is. This is a smoked 480E. This thing has gotten so ridiculously hot that you can see that the hot oil was actually getting it so hot in between the lugs that you can see this discoloration everywhere. And if you look in here, you'll see that it lines up with those. I mean, that's how hot those clutches and everything got. They were transmitting so much heat there. So much heat, in fact, that this snap ring is not supposed to be butted together. And actually just almost sets right in where it should be tight. Should move like this. Even the forward drum clutches are smoked. At least this one on the forward clutch, you can see that they started out red at one time, but as we flip it over, black as could be. And these steels are black to begin with because they're choline, but you can see there's no red clutch material left. These clutches are almost the same color as the steels. And then we get to the real gem here, which is the direct clutch hub here. So this plate goes into the forward drum, and your direct clutches, which are on in third, fourth, and reverse, if you can see, those are not supposed to be chewed to a billion pieces in there. It's supposed to be flat and smooth, kind of like, well, this little section right in the middle. This thing just machined itself to a billion pieces. And once again, see red, black. Why is that? Because these end clutches are against this steel plate, so they actually dissipate heat really well on that face, and everything in between here was slipping and doesn't dissipate the heat at all, and so it burns everything else. And then we get to this really good part. So these are the clutches that came out of this direct drum. This wave is supposed to be a wave plate, not a Belleville washer, which is what it is now, Belleville plate. This is supposed to be a wave plate. It's supposed to kind of look like this. It has been so hot, this thing's been glowing red that it completely distorted this whole thing. Just absolutely insane. Not only that, but this little video right here is actually of 2 steels and 2 clutches, and they are physically welded together. Oh wait. Look at this. I can almost pry these apart. Welded. Look at that. This one, the teeth are completely spun off of this. Just an absolutely insane amount of damage here. And then this is the backing plate for direct, third, fourth, reverse, like I said before. And this little bad boy right here is 2 clutches, 2 steels, and the backing plate completely welded together. These 2 big ass pry bars right here is what it took to separate these 2 drums, just so I could even look in here and see what was going on. Man, just an insane amount of damage. I haven't seen that one bad ever. And this is these 2 drums right here. This is a direct drop-in for a 400. This is not a direct drop-in for a 400, although everything inside this drum, the clutches, the plate, and the hub and everything, it's all exactly the same as a 400. This is a 480E, so the front half of this is different. One, it has these notches on here for the input speed sensor, and then 2, it has the planetary on the front here for the overdrive planetary that stacks on top of this. So now I'll take you to a little walk over here. Shop's a little bit of a mess here, just trying to get this thing tore down just to kind of see what was up. But one of the things that's kind of wrong with this one is one, you can't really see it so much, but there's a little bit of odd wear right in here. There's a step right in there. The converter or the bell housing or something is misaligned and causing this pump to get worn out and grooved up. So that's something that we'll have to address on the way in. One of the other things we'll have to address is some fluid level issues. I think there's definitely some pressure issues with this thing. There's also some fluid issues as far as cooling and that kind of stuff too, because this is one of the tubes, one of the power transfer tubes that goes from that direct clutch down into the rear planetary assembly and the sun gear. And you can see how dark and beat up it is right here. Like, this bushing is completely walked out of here and destroyed. So this part's really kind of no good at this point. Some issues there we're gonna have to address. This is the planet, or the sun gear that came out of it, and if you look, the side on the left is actually like normal colored, normal steel, but the side on the right here is completely black and discolored, and that's from that super hot oil coming back in here and dropping into this and just causing it not to have any cooling at all. I mean, the oil temp on this thing had to be like close to 400 degrees. I mean, it's close to flash point where this thing was going to catch on fire. One of the other things that's kind of a wreck in this thing, hopefully the parts washer's not too loud, we'll shut it off here, is this little guy right here. So this little guy right here is made by Transgo, and I used to kind of be guilty of putting these things in for quite a while. And what it is, it's an additional plate that goes onto the valve body, and what it does, it goes into the pressure control or the line pressure area, and it keeps it from, gives it a release so that if it gets excessive line pressure, it can release and basically pressure relief just straight back to the pan, which is good in the fact that when these things get into that crazy big pressure mode, they can actually break a filter that's in this valve body. And when they break this filter that's in this valve body, the filter actually sits right on the end of this board right here. It sits right in here. When they break this filter, this plastic filter, because the line pressure is too high, then it will actually shift and push the manual lever out, and it'll actually automatically shift the truck, and it does some really wrecked stuff. I've never actually seen one that has done that. And the other thing that they can do is when it gets extreme high pressures, it'll actually break this case out and blow up this case. Like I said, I've never actually had one that I've seen that's ever blown up like this, although it was a problem. And it was really only a problem in the first couple of years of these 4L80Es, because the pressure regulator valve that sits in the pump, the design of it led itself to a little bit of excessive wear, and it would get runaway line pressure. And so this is one of the things Transgo did. But one of the things that happens when I took this thing apart, so when you do these, you have to make sure that this thing, when you drill a hole, is dead centered and that there's no preload on it. And if you look, you can see that whoever did this did not drill the valve body correctly. When I took this thing apart, this thing was cocked off to the side like this, and because of that, it was getting bound up and it was actually extended out and not sealing properly. So because this wasn't drilled properly, wasn't set up and drilled properly, it actually was probably some of the reason why this thing was bypassing fluid and maybe overheating. I have a feeling there's a couple other issues that we're going to have to address in this trans, but overall, these are some of the issues with it. Also inside here, this rear planetary is just smoked hot. So this planetary will have to get replaced. The front planetary looks okay. Feels okay. Doesn't seem to have any excessive thrust. But this one's been so hot in the back here. And this is all a function of cooling and cooler flow. And so that's some of the things that we're going to have to address with this thing, is make sure this thing has proper amount of cooling flow and the proper fluid level in this pan. Some of my other guesses too is not only this little pressure relief valve, and just for clarification, I no longer install these, haven't for years, because we replaced that pressure regulator valve in the pump with a way better design. It's a better machined part that doesn't see the wear, and so it doesn't lock up and get runaway line pressure like you can see in some things. And one of the issues is in these custom, valve bodies and stuff that we're doing. This is actually for a buggy with a big motor and a lot of horsepower and stuff. One of the things is that we end up having to bump line pressure up and do some things with that to maintain to maintain, you know, clutch engagement and things like that. And you'll actually just blow this thing right off if you start cranking the line pressures up. Especially, and that comes back into tuning as well too, because you got a pressure control solenoid right here, and this pressure control solenoid will actually control all your line pressures. So when this thing's off or not functioning, it will go full line pressure. One of the downsides to this going full line pressure is one, and we're talking regulated, full regulated line pressure. It goes back to that pump again that controls it when it's at full line pressure. But one, we can start blowing this off right here, and obviously this one wasn't seating properly when it came in. But one of the other things that happens is when we go full line pressure like that, if you have a shitty tune or a bad controller or a bad valve, is actually what happens is in here in the pump is you have a pressure regulator valve, and then you have, or the boost sleeve. The boost valve is the one I was talking about, not the pressure regulator valve, but the boost valve right here, or the boost valve back here in the pressure regulator valve, is the pressure regulator valve will actually err always on giving the transmission itself, the valve body and the clutches and everything, all of the power or all of the fluid and pressure it needs first, and cooling is secondary. And so what happens is when you're at full line pressure or full throttle all the time for extended periods of times, and you don't address the pressure regulator valve or do some mods in here, is you'll actually completely limit your cooler flow and your converter flow, and knock it down to almost nothing, and that causes you to overheat too as well. So like I said, many issues in this transmission that are going to have to be addressed in order to fix some of these issues. And even once this thing gets in, it's going to have to make sure that it has a good tune and a good tuner, because no matter what I do here, if the tune's incorrect, this transmission will fry itself again. Although there is some mechanical things in here that we're going to address and change and make better, because yeah, there's a lot of different stuff I do on these custom 4L80Es now. So anyways, just a little quick video here, show you some of the different things that gets done, and some of the complaints or some of the causes of some of these complaints. But this one was definitely one of the worst I've taken apart. And I think this transmission only has about I mean, I don't think it has less than or more than 10 miles on it, if that. And you know, it's used hard, it's full throttled, it does a lot of crazy stuff, but you know, these are things we have to address, otherwise we're always going to have issues in this transmission and with these off-road things. You know, what works sometimes in a drag car, and most of the time what works in a drag car doesn't work for what we're doing. Like these red clutches and stuff like that are in this thing. Great for old school dragsters and drag cars and stuff. And a long time ago, these reds and Kolings, I mean, this was all that was available. This was the upgrades. Now clutch technology has come so far in the past 20 years that every time I see a builder still using reds and Kolings, it just kind of makes me laugh a little bit, because they're just stuck in 20 years ago tech, and they haven't embraced the new tech, just like everything else. Clutch material, clutch composition, the available clutches that are out there now are just far superior to these style clutches. Kolings were really cool, reds were really cool, but honestly, it's really not even a necessary thing anymore, as long as you know what you're doing for using the new technology of clutches out there, new styles. So anyways, kind of hope you enjoyed the little 4L80E video. I know it's a mess in here, but just trying to get this thing apart so I can get some parts coming ASAP and get this buggy back on the road. But anyways, I'll try to maybe take some updates and pictures of it when I get her done, and you can see, well, I guess won't be able to see the inside, but I'll show it when it's all cleaned up and working a little bit better, and as we address through some of the issues that we need to fix. So anyways, thanks. Have a good one.